Hello everybody, welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by Josh.
I always go to wave, and then I realise that no one can see me when I wave. It's only when I talk, so I'm waving to you all the time.
Yeah, we go from Google Hangouts, which automatically switches the view to whoever's talking. So if I just want to, cut you off visually, I can just make like a sort of grunt, and it'll cut back to me anyway. But
watch, I can do it now. Ha!
I could have had something amazing to show the people, but they'll never see it. Anyway, Resident Evil 8 is increasingly coming into view, and there's a bunch of details which came from a play session from last March. Now this is reported from biohazardcast.com, and it's also been followed up by Nibble on Twitter and various other sources as well. And so yeah, it seems like Resident Evil 8, this is the version we're getting, and there's just a ton of stuff to break down. So first up, the name. I'm not massive on this. It's Resident Evil Village. With
my favourite M. Night Shyamalan film.
So that's what they're going for. There you go. Nothing's real in the end. And so the village, the name, the logo, it's VIII and then age, which I guess, apparently in an earlier leak, they talked about the idea that it would have a clever title. I guess, how does this strike you? I don't think it looks cool.
You know what, right, there's a lot, I've only skimmed this leak and these rumours so far, and there's a lot that I actually believe, but the idea of it being called Village isn't necessarily one of them. It sounds very placeholdery, I wouldn't be surprised if it got changed. It's not exactly Resident Evil 3 Nemesis or Resident Evil 7 Biohazard or anything like that, is it? It's a bit nondescript, even though it is, quite smart what they're doing with the VIII
It reminds me a lot of Driver 3 when it was like Drive 3er, and it's like trying to force a number or a name into it. Anyway, enemy-wise, apparently there's a new stalker enemy called the Witch, which again lines up with an earlier leak that apparently they were going to be delving into more supernatural elements, and they were going to have these sort of entities that would haunt you throughout the game. So one of the main ones is just something being referred to as a witch, which apparently you fight like Marguerite from Resident Evil 7. Marguerite was the spider vagina lady who would throw all sorts of insects your way, and apparently with the Witch, when you defeat her, she kind of becomes one with you. She sort of dissipates into you and then haunts you for the rest of the game. So they're very much going down a cerebral, PT-esque route, if I was going to draw a comparison.
I like that a lot. A lot of the rumours so far have kind of compared what they're doing in this game to Resident Evil 3.5 with the Hookman. That was a game that, although it still had all of the biohazard goodness, it had, hallucinations and an excuse to have ghosts, essentially. It's an excuse to go down the PT route. And for me, as much as I loved Resi 7, I loved the demo and the implications of that, because that was very much trying to, ape PT style and have a bit more of a supernatural, ghostly style edge to it. So I think that's a good way to kind of have your cake and also scran it down your neck, because you get to still have the classic Resident Evil stuff, but you get to frame the ghost things in a way that doesn't really break from the series and makes sense, because you have this persistent enemy. Once you defeat it, you're infected, and those infections, whether it's the T-virus or the Last Plagueis or whatever, always mess with the person's mind. So it'll be good to see that externalized for once. I think that's like a cracking idea, though I want to ask you a question.
Go on.
The idea of persistent enemies in Resident Evil. Right, they're part of the series, but at this point, I'm kind of sick of them.
It depends how they're handled. I thought Mr. X was done immaculately well. I thought he was annoying, but not to the point where he didn't break the game or anything. It was just that occasionally you just needed to do something. You needed to use a crank on the side of a door or whatever, and he's in the room with you, so you've got to run around a bit, and it just didn't feel great. Nemesis, they sort of dial him back, and he only appears in very specific places. But I think when Mr. X worked, when you know he's walking around that space and you can hear his footsteps and stuff and you're haunted by him, I think that's incredibly effective. But I don't think they can keep playing the same card over and over, and I would assume that with a numbered installment they've kind of got something more fleshed out. They have to advance that tech, because for me Nemesis was a massive step back.
Yeah, I mean, you would hope so, but for me, I like the persistent enemies when they're done right, like you said, and they have done them right in the past. Just over the past 3 games, since Resident Evil 7, we've had these persistent enemies. We had Jack in Resi 7, we had Mr. X, like you said, in 2, we've had Nemesis in 3, and they're all being kind of different, but it's sort of like, I want to be surprised again. And we've almost got to learn the behaviors of these enemies, so there's only so many times they can unexpectedly crash through a wall, and for us to be shocked. I was going to say, it's like they crash through the wall, you freak out a bit, you do your little animation, you shoot them for a bit, they go down, you can't defeat them, and then you go and get the shotgun and you keep going. Like you said, they've done it 3 times in a row now, so they kind of need to do something other than another bullet sponge walking at you. Well, that said, though, I mean, Marguerite was really good in Resi 7, vagina spiders and all. She was terrifying in VR, man. But I think that's partly the fact that she wasn't just like this big, lumbering, trench coat wearing guy who was following you. She could scuttle around the walls, or she could drop in from unexpected places. And that was only for a mission or two. But if you extend that to a more nimble, persistent enemy, like the Witch is hopefully going to be across different levels, that doesn't just kind of have one mode of walking around. It's not the thudding footsteps. It's more the surprise of, ooh, is she going to drop in from this roof with a bunch of spiders out of her genitals? I don't know, maybe.
It's that's definitely her username online, is just spider vagina or whatever. But yeah, I mean, if they can pretty much make the liquor corridor into a full, like, more of a fleshed out enemy across the whole game. Like, I love the very first time you go to that corridor in Resident Evil 2, the remake, and you know that the liquor is in there somewhere, and it's like trying to fight a spider in your bedroom, and it's just sort of like, well, you know that it's there somewhere, and then when you sort of hear it, and oh my god, it's on the roof, like above me, or it's actually slightly behind me, I've already walked past it, and oh dear Christ, how am I going to get rid of it? I think that's extremely effective, and knowing that it can be anywhere is obviously a different dynamic than having something just walk towards you again. So yeah, one of the other points that I picked out from the write-up on biohazardcast.com was they note that there'll be a demo. It's just the way that the thing is phrased. I'm going to keep this point short because I might have just misread it, but it's just they're referring to the fighting the witch enemy, and saying that, you know, when you are fighting it, it'll be, you do so in a demo. So either that means that was the demo they were given at the play session, or they're planning on releasing some sort of demo, which obviously they did with Resident Evil 7, so it would make sense.
Yeah, that would be, the Capcom over the past few games with Resident Evil have been a big, you know, champion of these demos, and I do think it gets people in, like, you know, I remember how excited Ben Roy was when he was playing the Resident Evil 3 demo, you know what I mean? And I think it's a kind of a dying art, and it would make sense for them to continue it, and it would get people, you know, excited, and by the sounds of things, you know, following on from Resident Evil 7, it might be a hard sell for some people, you know, a lot of people don't necessarily like the first-person style, or like Ethan, or like, you know, the biohazards introduced in that game, so a demo might be a way to get out in front and be like, look, this thing is pant-wettingly scary. Well, it's really good. Play it. Well,
speaking of Ethan, if you're not a fan of Ethan, tough luck for you. Dude seems to be back as the main character. So apparently we're still playing as Ethan, but Chris Redfield also plays a main role. The story's set in a European setting, and the artwork that goes alongside the new logo it just kind of shows like an Eastern European village up in the mountains. And so apparently Ethan's the main character, encounters Chris Redfield, and apparently when doing that triggers a series of flashbacks, which I went back and looked at the end of Resident Evil 7. When Redfield drops in, he doesn't say anything that alludes to the fact that they know each other, so assumedly they become friends after the end of RE7, and then something happens that wipes Ethan's memory or whatever, and him coming back across Chris Redfield then triggers a series of flashbacks. So apparently there's going to be a whole bunch of hallucinations, there's going to be all these different flashbacks. Chris Redfield seems to play a prominent role in the flashbacks, but I don't know if you're actually going to get to play as him or not. But in regards to Chris overall, they've redesigned him. They've tried to make him more rugged, give him a bit of a beard, try to make him more of a split between the clean-cut version that was in 7 and the sort of like more quote-unquote iconic one that was in 5 and 6. But what do you think about that?
I have a lot of thoughts on this, Scott Tailford, actually, because one, Ethan, I'm fine with him coming back because he's not like a great Resident Evil protagonist, but that's because he was barely a protagonist. Like, he barely has a character in 7. And I think that's an intentional choice because it was first person. I think Capcom wanted to put you in his shoes more than make a character. But there's enough of a story there, and I like him as more of an everyman compared to Chris, who can literally punch boulders into lava, you know what I mean? So I think,
wait a minute, is that not who this is? Oh, no, sorry, yeah. I was thinking, I was getting so lost off. There's so much dumb stuff in Resident Evil lore. Anyway, carry on.
Yes, I think it's a good idea to balance, you know, Ethan with Chris and have this new character with a more established character. But that said, I feel like I've been really negative. I'm really looking forward to Resident Evil 8. This sounds good. But I'm just a bit sick of Chris, just because he's shown up in the last few games. Obviously, you controlled him properly in 5. He was one of the main characters in 6. He even showed up at the end of 7 and had a DLC after him. And, you know, I'm fine with him, but there are so many good Resident Evil characters you could reimagine and stuff. And although we have had, you know, Leon and Claire again in the 2 remake and Jill in the 3, I want to see what those characters are doing now in an updated version of them. I don't want like just a throwback for as good as they are.
I do think they'll make a joke about punching boulders. Like they'll come up against something and he'll be like, "Well, you're just going to try and punch it out the way," and it's like, "No, that would be crazy," or something like that, something stupid and on the nose, because that moment in 5 is, I guess, iconic and memorable for maybe all the wrong reasons. But yeah, apparently in the flashbacks, apparently Ethan and Maya returns as well. They have a baby. Then there's no more detail as to how much time has passed and things like that. But apparently there's some baby character, and so like Ethan and Maya have settled down, which sounds kind of cool. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the timeline, I guess they're still very much going with RE7. They're codifying that. They're making Ethan more of a main role in the canon, which, like you said, was like the character itself was maybe a little bit divisive. He never really felt that fleshed out. The whole point was that he was more of an everyman. So I don't know. How do you feel about playing as Ethan again rather than just going with another STARS member?
Well, I've said this in a bunch of Resident Evil videos before, but I'm pleased that Capcom seem to be having another crack at what they started in Resident Evil 7. That game was obviously divisive and Ethan wasn't very fleshed out, but I want to see them build upon that and try to, make what was good even better and try to, remedy some of the issues. I think they should at least make one more game in that style. After that, fair enough, but I don't want it to just be one and done, like I've said before. I want them to at least, try to capitalize on the good things, and then if people still don't like it, then maybe they can shift gears. But for me, like I say, I love that Resident Evil always reinvents itself, and I want to see them stick with this style and give it one more go and try to make Ethan, as memorable as Chris or Jill, even though that might not happen, and commit to that storyline for at least one more game, and then they can break off and do whatever they want to
cut some more arms off, cut some more legs off, make him that guy. He always seems to come back. Do whatever you need to do to make him a memorable dude. The final two things, one is the inventory system. Apparently they're experimenting with bringing back Resident Evil 4's inventory system. The thing after that is the release date of Q1 2021. Inventory system, though, I was never a fan of that. I always thought that you had to sacrifice something. It's just, look, if you want to play Tetris, go play Tetris. I can't be bothered with the whole, you got the best gun in the game, but you can't slot it in because you've still got a few herbs that you can't take. I hated that thing, and I thought it was stupid and restrictive. I don't even like the one in RE3, to be honest. I've got the bulk curse, but I've got to get rid of the fire hose to use them.
You know what, if we weren't on video call right now, you might as well have just stabbed me in the heart and chopped my legs and hands off, because for me, this is the big thing that tickled my pickle, Scott Tilford. I was a huge fan of Resident Evil 4 in particular, that inventory style, opening up the little briefcase and trying to slot in all of your resources.
Just play Tetris.
You can't have shotguns in Tetris. You can't have rocket launchers in Tetris.
Do Battle Royale, mate.
Spat all over myself. That was a disgusting pop, that. But I want resource management to come back. And as much as I love Resident Evil 2 Remake and quite enjoy Resident Evil 3 Remake, I think it's missing that element of, that survival horror mechanic, because that is such an integral part of being stressed and not having, the right amount of weapons or the right amount of bullets or any herbs. Like, making those sacrifices, for me, is a huge part of what makes these games scary.
That's true, and when it works, it totally works. It's just sometimes it's a fine line, and sometimes it can just feel like you're over encumbered. You can't pick up the thing you clearly need, and sometimes they don't balance it very well. I mean, RE3 gets it pretty well in the remake, where if you pick something up, you can just combine it there and then. I don't think you can choose to drop something there and then. I think you have to drop the thing you want to pick up, go back into the inventory, drop something else, and then pick it up again.
Yeah, the mad thing is about both RE2 and RE3's inventory system is that if you drop something, you can't pick it back up. What's that about?
It's just
let me do it. Yeah, let me do it Animal Crossing style, where I could just leave things on the ground and come back to it later on.
If there was any franchise for RE to learn from, it's Animal Crossing. And then the last thing is that they're penning in a Q1 2021 release, which again lines up with all the other leaks that we've had to this point. But obviously the current state of the world means that stuff just might be pushed back. Same way that Last of Us 2 was, and the vast majority of games seem to be. But I guess that idea of another year rolls around, another Resident Evil, do you think that's going to work, or do you think they should take a break anyway?
I think it will work purely because they've got different teams working on different games. I think we might get sick of it eventually, especially if they're of, varying qualities or whatever. But by the sounds of it, this game has been in development for nearly 4 years now, if the other leaks that line up with this information are also true. So that's more than enough time to crack out, a really good sequel. And I think as long as Capcom doesn't get greedy again and try to rush the games out, then they should be onto a winner, I think, because the best thing about Resident Evil, like I said, is that it is so malleable and that it can reinvent itself. So it's never one thing over and over again. It's, obviously similar mechanics and characters, but the best part of having, the remakes compared to 7, compared to this game, is that they're all fundamentally different styles of game, and I think that makes it okay if you do have one every year or every 2 years, as long as Capcom doesn't, fall back into bad habits.
Yeah, I got some worrying vibes from RE3's remake, but I still need to finish the rest of it off. But yeah, I mean, I trust in the IP, I trust in the lore. Like, obviously, it's got legions of fans. The thing that I'm waiting for them to confirm is whether it's in first or third person, because even at the beginning of RE3's remake, it opens like RE7, and they sort of tease like, oh, this is kind of what we do now, and then it zoom back out and you're in third again. So if that means that they're experimenting with more hybrid stuff and go first for a bit, third for a bit, the idea of picking up the tapes in RE7 and then going through someone else's perspective, things like that are really enticing as to what they could do overall. But yeah, let us know what you think down in the comments below of a Resident Evil 8 called Village, and all the different things that we've covered. For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Josh from WhatCulture.com.
I'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.